He'd have breakfast, but nothing for lunch or dinner because I was like, I'm not gonna put up with a picky eater, and he just didn't. So some kids are that way. Anyway, sorry. I guess we need to start the live stream. Sorry.
No, totally fine. We're
Sorry.
loading up right now.
Have
I
breakfast,
love
but
it. I
nothing
love
for
it.
lunch or dinner because I was like, I'm not gonna put up with a picky eater, and he just didn't. So
Now we're going
some
back.
kids are that way.
Oh,
Anyway, sorry. I guess we need to start the live stream. Sorry.
yes.
Well, we're on like a
We're
delay
loading up
here.
right now.
I love it. I love it.
Lunch or dinner because I was like, I'm not gonna.
We have just gotten started. Okay, welcome everybody. We are excited to have you all here for the Honeybee Mine event. Today, we have Sarah T. Dubb and Penny Reed. Sarah T. Dubb has written Birding with Benefits and Honeybee Mine, and we have Penny Reed as her conversation partner. We are so excited to have everyone here today. For everyone joining virtually, if you have any questions for the authors, please leave them in the YouTube chat, and the authors will answer them towards the end of their conversation. With that being said, you guys can take it away.
Hey, Sarah.
Hi, Penny. Thanks for being here with me today, and thanks, Love Sweet Arrow, for hosting us virtually since I couldn't get to myself to Chicago this spring.
You guys can take it away.
And then did you pull yourself out?
Okay, Sarah, let's go ahead and get started.
We need to pull ourselves out.
Love Sweet Arrow
Let's
for-
actually first, can we talk about Honeybee Mine first? I'm just, sorry, I've never done a YouTube video before, so y'all are gonna have to be a little patient with me as I interview Sarah about Honeybee Mine. And so, Sarah, I'm gonna start with tropes. Is that okay?
Let's start.
Okay,
anywhere
let's
you
start
want.
with tropes. Okay, so reformed bad guy, single dad, girl next door, type A personality. My first question is this book about me? And I asked that because her name is Penny and she's a type A personality. And as I was reading it, I was like, wait a minute. So let's talk about Penny. Let's talk about Penny and the tropes and everything. I mean, this book is a lot of fun because it is about me. And no, I'm just kidding. But let's do this. Let's talk about Penny first. So how did you come up with Penny?
That is funny. I am like for the first time making the connection, like, oh, I asked Penny to talk with me, and this book is about a woman named Penny. What's funny actually about her name, is that I wrote after Birding with Benefits, actually wrote a whole other book that I thought was going to be my sophomore novel. And it never like pulled together in the way that it needed to, and I had to like put it aside and start all over. But in that book, the two characters are sort of battling over a job, and every morning they flip a penny to decide, and they call heads or tails to decide like who's going to get to make decisions that day. And so when I was working on that book and I was starting to conceptualize Honeybee Mine, I wanted to name the main character Penny because for me it was like a little offering from my previous book, like pulling me into the next one. And then I ended up not publishing that book. So so that isn't out in the world, but but it was like this kind of comforting connection for me to almost like get this penny that was like used over and over in that novel and like bring it over into my next book. So that's why she's named Penny.
Sure, a likely story. Okay.
Likely story. I just came up with that on the fly so you wouldn't get freaked out that I'm basing my characters on you.
That's hilarious. Oh my gosh, when I saw that, I was cracking up, especially at the summary for the book when you initially asked me, and then also when I found out that you were having a new book come out, and I read in the summary of the book, in the blurb for the book, that she was named Penny and had a type A personality. I felt very flattered. Way to make it about myself, though, right? So she and Xander meet back up. She's the girl next door. So take us through that.
Yeah, literally. So, the book is set in Sullivan's Glen, a little town in upstate New York in the Finger Lakes area. And Penny is a third generation beekeeper, kind of running the family farm with her mom and her grandma, and has always lived there, really like loves this town, really embedded in this town, and running a lot on her own, kind of feeling that the kind of woman that like just feels the weight of the world on her shoulders. which is all women really. And Xander was his grandfather lived next door to Penny, and Xander was sort of shuttled off to town every summer as a teenager. He had a single mom who was having a hard time, and so he sort of felt like nobody ever wanted him, and he was just like stuck in this terrible small town every summer, where he like acted out because he was angry, a sad, angry boy, and he acted out, and then he got a reputation, so he acted out more. Um, and then he never went back once he was 18 or 19. And now he's back for a summer with his son and his ex-wife, who's his co-parent, and his best friend, who's his ex-wife's girlfriend. They're like a happy, non-traditional family group. Yeah, and so he's back for the summer, and he's fixing up his grandfather's house, which was left to him after his grandfather's death. So he's next door to Penny and her property, and they end up, working together on this festival. And I think trope wise, it just felt like when I knew I wanted to do a small town, it was like this, like you gotta have the girl next door and the bad boy. Like I think this is for like, every Gilmore Girls fan who was like Team Jess from the start. Um, and so it was just really fun to play with those because I think with tropes it's always just kind of fun to use them at the starting point and then think, okay, how can we play with them or deepen them or texturize them? And so I had a lot of fun with that aspect of it.
I love that you said texturize them because something that I love about the romance genre is the comfort of it, but then the surprises in it. So let's talk about the Honey Festival. I loved that you had well, first of all, a festival in a small town, but that it was a honey.
Do it.
I mean, you have to do it, right? And so let's talk about the Honey Festival, and all of the lovely chaos that surrounds it. So, was it based on a festival that you had attended, or what? Where did you draw from for the festival?
Yeah, I think
it
that's
almost became its. I'm sorry, I wanted to make sure I said this, that it almost became its own character in the book.
Yeah.
So I love that.
That's true, especially because like this book doesn't have a third act like breakup of the relationship, but it does have like a third act crisis with the Honey Festival as as like the culprit. Yeah, I mean, I have a friend who lives in like a small town in Kentucky, and she is always telling me about the festival she and her family goes to, and I'm like, this can't even be real. She's like, oh, it's that fairy walk tonight, and like everybody just sets up fairy houses in their front yards, and all the neighborhood children walk around. I'm like, is this for real? So it was in part inspired by those stories. I went to, this is set in the Finger Lakes region of New York where my family has vacationed a couple of times, which is why I said it there. And so my first summer there, it was like, oh, there's festivals all over the place. Like every week is a different festival. And so it just felt very like springy and summery and like of the region. And I wanted it to be a festival that Penny had a big hand in planning. And so in the book, the history is kind of like that her grandma started it just because she needed to sell off like extra stocks of honey. And it just kind of grew into this now really big community event that Penny is still running. And so it's not just honey, it's vendors, it's music, it's, in Tucson, twice a year, we have like a really big street fair that takes over a big portion of downtown. So I think I was just thinking of all those festivals with all the tents set up and the music, and you're walking around and getting samples of things and buying stuff that later you're like, did I really need to buy this like strange craft trinket? And when we were back there in that area, I was there when I was like thinking about the book, and then I was there the following year when I was in the line edit stage of the book. So it was really neat to be there with the book like completed and kind of putting finishing touches on it. And I was very proud because it was a joke for me in the book to like name these other festivals. Like there's a garlic festival and there's a dairy festival. And when I was there, I saw signs for a garlic festival and for a dairy festival. I was like so proud of myself. I was so gratified, and we got to go to this really beautiful like art festival that had tons of honey and tons of beekeepers set up selling honey. So I was like, "Oh my God, it's real. It's real."
That's so cool. So why bees and honey? Why bees and honey for this book?
So my first book was birdwatching, and I was definitely looking at like other kind of niche animal subjects is like my sweet spot. It's what I enjoy learning and writing about. And we were batting around a lot of different ideas, and then actually my editor was like, "Hey, somebody around here in the hallway like asked about bees, mentioned bees." And I was like, "Oh, why didn't we think of that?" Because I just think they're so, first of all, like even just saying bees, I think you see the setting, right? Like you see the
Yeah.
flowers and the sunshine, and you just kind of know, okay, like I know the vibe of this. And I think bees are, like ripe with metaphors for us to use. Um, and I liked that it was like could be somebody's job, and not just a hobby, but like her livelihood.
Yeah.
Um, Once I got into learning more about bees too and talking about beekeepers, I really liked thinking about how are the ways that like we might model our like talk about bees anthropomorphically or compare ourselves to bees, but then like what are ways that we get to be different from
Mhm.
them? And so that ended up being a fun thing to explore. But yeah, as soon as she said bees, I was just like, okay, yeah, like I can see it all, right? Like I see the flowers in the small town and everything. So yeah.
So is you found bees very inspirational for the book?
Yeah, I did. I just think as soon as I thought of them, I thought, okay, that so much that already gives us so much to work with because I already kind of know what it's going to feel like and look like. And then I did research. I did a couple like beekeeping workshops with beekeepers here, where it was the whole deal. Like I got to put on the whole big beekeeping suit and go out and handle the frames and kind of do these kind of hive inspections that Penny walks them through in the book. um and that doing that kind of research is so fun because everybody else there is trying to be a beekeeper themselves, so they're listening to all these details and I'm just like, how's that person like move in the suit, how are they like, how do I describe this bee frame, what are these bees doing, like there I was doing a workshop where this beekeeper was showing us the frame and he was like, "Oh, look at this." And he called us over and this bee is like chewing its way out of a cell because they lay their eggs in there and the larvae develop and then they cover it while the bee is like developing. And then once the bee is formed, it chews its way out. And so he's like, "Oh, look." And so we watched this bee just chew its way out and like emerge out of the cell and start walking around on the frame. And I was like, this is so like this moment is so cool, and I knew I would write that right into the book, which I did. Like they have a scene where they watch a bee come out and start walking around and drying its wings off. And so that's the kind of stuff that I think without, especially without in-person research, I wouldn't get to, because I did also watch a ton of YouTube videos and listen to like beekeeper podcasts, and I lurked in like a beekeeper Discord. Um, but the in-person stuff definitely gave me like the most to work with.
Have you ever wanted to be a beekeeper? Like after writing this book?
I thought I warned my partner. I was like, "Watch out. We're going to go to Beehive by the time I'm done researching this." But I actually I was like, "Oh, this feels too hard." Like I love birding because you can just go out and like look at birds everywhere, but with
Yeah.
beekeeping there's, you're just kind of always monitoring for potential problems, and that sounded like way too stressful to me. So I
That
was like,
sounds like
now I value like a good, like I'll never again be like, oh, that honey is expensive or whatever, and I'll value and I really like when we were in New York over the summer, getting honey that's like kind of from different times, and so it's from different plants, and really like taking time to think like, okay, how is this like wildflower honey different from this honey, and that kind of stuff. I definitely feel like I have a deeper appreciation for, but also I'm so happy that those people are handling it.
do you feel like after people read this book, they also will have a deeper appreciation for honey and wax and bee products and what bees do?
I hope so, and a deeper appreciation of what it means to be right, because this is something that Penny grapples with. It's only mentioned very briefly, but like she can't compete with, right, like honey production at that scale. She can't compete with like a giant, grocery store brand of honey. And so I do hope a little bit that, folks are thinking, oh yeah, like what, if we think about just like how people are connected to land and place and to their work and to the history of that work, right? Which for her it is not rare at all for people to be second, third, fourth generation beekeepers.
Right.
I think it's a really special thing that's passed through families. So I do hope that people can, yeah, I mean, obviously she's written for the sake of this book, but I think she represents, families and people that are really doing this for their livelihood.
I After we're finished with the interview, you and I should just sit down and talk. I because I have so many thoughts related to this, but I want to talk more about the book
Okay.
because this book is so special. But I also wrote a book recently, it hasn't been published yet, about the tension between globalization and localization and how you have all of these crafts. And that was something that was so beautiful in this book, is that you have these crafts and these crafts people and this expertise and this tradition that's passed down from generation to generation. And it's lost through globalization. And we have to, as a society, really, I guess this is why I'm so excited. One of the reasons, obviously, the romance, but that we as a society have to make this decision. Are we okay? Are we content with handing this off to globalization, to the cheapest bidder? Or do we as a society want to treasure and keep these traditions and these crafts and maintain them for future generations? And then what price are we willing to pay for that? So I loved it. Just this book had a depth to it that I really love, in this deeper, longer conversation that you and I will have separate. So let's talk about the romance.
Okay. Sorry. Wait, no, I'm only going to say one more thing about that now that we're on which is I think there's this concept too of her in the book where Xander has moved in next door and is trying to decide what to do with his grandfather's land. And for Penny, that's very anxiety inducing because these bees, right, which is something I learned, like they'll travel 3 miles for nectar. And so, right, and this is a problem we see with bee colonies and hive collapse and everything, is she's like, what's going to happen to this land next door? Because somebody comes in here, decides they don't like the bees flying around, and they poison their water, they put pesticides everywhere, they do whatever, like that's going to impact me. And so I do, I think that I hope there's a sense in this book of like how everybody is connected and helping each other, but also able to hurt each other, and like, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And as you said,
we can talk about the romance.
Well, and then her tension and this creates such a wonderful underlying tension between them, where she's almost assuming, oh, he's going to come in here and ruin everything. And so, right. And then from his side, he has this memory of her being this perfect whatever. So this creates this lovely, natural tension that it's not, there wasn't a misunderstanding. There wasn't, it's just a very natural way for them to start out a bit as enemies who misunderstand each other.
Right.
And so that also was love. That was great. I mean, when things start out that way in a book with this natural tension rather than something that was, I don't want to use the word manufactured, but it's not at all manufactured. And you feel for both of them when you come into their relationship at this point. And so what was it like? I know you to be a lovely, upbeat, positive, wonderful person. What was it like writing Xander and writing his perspective, his dialogue? What was it like getting in his head to write his dialogue and his perspective?
Yeah, it's funny because I don't know if you feel this way, but I find when I'm doing a dual POV story that I start out like really feeling like I know one character much better than the other one, and I felt like I just knew Xander from the very beginning. And I think part is that a lot of his journey and kind of like coming to terms with how he was parented, with the relationship he had with his grandfather, like, and his decisions to be like a certain type of parent for his child are like drawn in part from just like my years of therapy and are much exaggerated versions of things I've been through. And so I feel like I understand that that core, especially of having like a parent who was just experiencing a lot of their own stuff, and um and like how that impacts you. And so I felt like I understood him pretty well on that level. And also because he is a single parent and he has an 11-year-old, and I have 3 kids, and I find that I have found through my own experiences and through the experiences of friends that like that tween stage, that 10 to 12 stage, is really, 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 really tough. And so and I'm even like in it now for the third time. And so I feel like that that feeling of like watching your kid go from being like a kid into the next stage, and they're almost like bouncing back and forth, and they're stuck in the angst of that experience, and you're like, who is my child, like, and why is my child yelling at me, or why is my child slamming a door all of a sudden, like they were just playing with Legos 5 minutes ago, you know? Um, yeah, so I do think that I had to, with Xander, when I revise, I always have to add a lot more conflict, which is funny if you read my books, which have almost no conflict in them, if you could imagine the first draft. Um, but one thing for Xander was that I think in my first draft, he comes back into town and he's like pretty grumpy about it. And everybody in the town is like super nice and it's just really great all the time. And my editor was like, everyone in this town is very nice. Like even he has this encounter with a cop in the first draft, and it's like even the cop is nice. And I was like, oh yeah, why did I do that? So I actually went right when I was revising. I was reading this really great series by Gregory Ash, who writes kind of like romantic suspense sort of, and he has a series called like Hazard and Somerset, and it's about two cops, um and it's like a slow burn romance as they're working together, and it's set in a small town, and these books are nothing like mine. They are like really gritty, they're really violent, but they're set in a small town, and one of the characters has come back, and everywhere he looks, there's just like a horrible memory, right? Like he was a victim of like hate crimes, and um he can't look at anything without having this awful like
Mm.
visceral memory of things that happened to him. And
Mhm.
it was really informative for me, even though I was writing a book with a much different tone, to think like, oh yeah, like what, even if, right, part of what I want to get at the book is like this town is just a town, right? And Xander was going through all his teenage stuff, and like was, as we do, like we put meaning on everything and everyone around us when we're like going through an experience. But what would it be like to go back and have to see that place where you spent really, really difficult times, right? And so I did, I think that reading those Gregory Ash books really helped me like get a little a little angrier, and a
Mhm.
little bit, and also think like, yeah, there are going to be people there that are still just like, that are going to be jerks, um, and let that like a little bit more of that anger fester.
Do you have a favorite scene between Penny and Xander?
Oh
Or
my,
you can pick maybe three favorite scenes.
3 favorite scenes between Penny and Xander. Oh my God, Penny. I mean, I really like they have a scene where they argue with each other. So something that I is very important for me to do in my books is for us to see the couple get in a fight and like move past the fight,
Mm.
because I want the reader to know like they can do this together, because like they are, if we are going to believe that they're going to be in a good relationship, we have to believe that like that when they trigger each other and when they set each other off, that they can recover from that. And so there's a scene where Penny and Xander are like, he's come to her with this idea for the honey festival, and he doesn't understand this kind of history she has with men bringing big ideas to her that then fall apart. And so
Yeah.
she reacts very strongly, and he doesn't understand why. And then she like pushes on his bruise of like everybody thinking he's a fuck up all the time, right? And so they're shutting each other down by pressing on their bruises, pressing on their wounds. Um, and it's a moment where they could like explode at each other or storm away from each other. And we have like a tense moment, And then she's like, "Oh God, I can't believe I just said that to you. Like, I'm really sorry." And they like calm down. So I really like that scene a lot. I like that modeling of being able to be like, "Oh gosh, I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry I just said that thing that hurt you."
Yeah.
You know, because I think our tendency is just like always to throw up our defenses. Um, there's a scene, this is funny, this is connected to the audio, but when I listen to the audio of this book, there is a part after Penny and Xander sleep together for the first time where she's like something like, "Oh, I guess that lives up to the hype." And he was like, "You guess." And he kind of like tickles her or something. And in the audio, the narrator has Penny like do this wonderful, like bubbly, happy giggle as she responds to him that just like made me light up to hear it. Like I just thought like, yes, that's the exact vibe like of
Yeah.
where they are right now, which is just like playful and light. And it was just done. That moment was done. The whole audio is so great, but that moment just made me. I think I was driving and I stopped and like went back and just like listened to that moment again. Like, oh, she's like laughing. It was so nice. So yeah, those are a couple moments that come to mind.
Those are fantastic moments. I do love when an audiobook translates the media, the written media in such a way that gives it more depth in meaning. Did you have a say in your audiobook? Did you?
Yeah, so the audiobook stuff actually kind of starts back with Birding with Benefits. They sent me several samples for different narrators, and I'll tell like an abbreviated part of the story,
No,
but
no,
it's
no.
a great
Tell the whole
story.
story.
So
I love this story.
so I was like, I'm just gonna do this based on vibes, like pick these people based on vibes because I can't. Otherwise, it'll take me 7 years to decide who should narrate this book. Like I'll take it too seriously, and so I listened to all the male voices first and really liked one of them a lot and had my daughter listen to it and she was like, "Yeah, he sounds really nice." And I was like, "Yeah, I think cuz in Birding with Benefits the male character is he's very very soft-spoken." And
Mhm.
so there was Evan who did the narration has like this real, I don't know, he just sounded nice. I was just like, "Yes, that's true." And then I wrote down his name and his name is Evan Sibley. And because I'm a birder, the name Sibley like brings up alarm bells because there's about 1,000 Sibley guide to birds. Um, and I was like, "Oh, that's like a weird coincidence." And then I Googled him, and he is in fact like a child of David Sibley, who wrote all these, probably like one of most well-known birders in North America. Like wrote 1,000 bird guides. Both of Evan's parents are ornithologists, and he grew up birding. And I feel like I like heard it in in his voice, even though I didn't know that. It feels like there was just like something in there. Um, and then I went through the women and picked the female voice that I felt had like this spunk of the character, but also a maturity. And then after I had picked the two of them and we'd been able to move forward and I was able to be in touch with them a little bit, I found out that they're like the two of them are in love in real life. They're partners in New York. And so I just like, I picked them separately and I just was like, this is meant to be. And so for Honeybee Mine, they actually the Simon and Schuster suggested another set of narrators. And I was like, can you just get Evan and Mia back again? Because
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what I want. And in truth, I was really hearing Evan particularly. I was kind of hearing him sometimes as I was
yeah.
writing. Yeah, so they did it again. And I think they just like absolutely knocked it out of the park, and it's one of those small town stories where there's so many characters popping in and out and being kind of goofy. And I think they just did it so beautifully. And there's, because Xander has this 11-year-old son, Winter, they have a lot of conversations that I think are done really well, where Winter feels childlike but not like parodied.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, they did an amazing job. They're the best.
I want to digress for a little bit and ask you about your background as an author. What made you decide to want to write books?
Um, so I've always been like someone who can write like for a job or, like, oh, somebody needs to write this. Like, oh, Sarah will write it. I'll write it. Like
Yeah.
been a skill I've had. But I didn't write fiction until 2020 in the pandemic, like lots of people. And I actually I was in graduate school to become a librarian at the time. And I took a class called Reader's Advisory that is just all about how we can help library patrons like find the next book they like. So if
Mhm.
they're like, oh, I loved Fourth Wing, like, well, we're like, okay, we'll try this and this and this. And so a real philosophy of my instructor of the class was like, even if no matter what you read, like we all need to be familiar with these like popular fiction genres so that we can talk to people and help them. And so every week we concentrated on a different genre and we got to pick a book that we wanted to read in that genre.
Mm.
And so in the romance week, I read The Suffragette Scandal by Courtney Milan. And my mom read a lot of romance when I was a kid and I would always thumb through them. And like I learned real fast to open up 2/3 of the way through. Like, and I would, this is, how is this for like the most 90s experience you can have? I would sit on my water bed and use our like three-way calling on my house phone to call friends and like read them passages from my mom's romance novels. But anyway, I never actually then as a high schooler and college student and young adult, I was like just a dedicated, serious literary fiction reader. Did my master's in English, like very serious literature person. So I hadn't read romance, and so I read that Courtney Milan book, and it was the spring of 2020, so it was a very chaotic time and I loved it for all the reasons, anybody who listens to this who reads romance loves romance. It made me very happy. It made me feel joyful and it made me feel good and I loved knowing that everyone was going to be okay. And so I just started writing more and more and more. I mean, reading more and more. And then at some point I was like, I think I can write this.
Mm.
And it's a little bit what we were talking about earlier when we were talking about the tropes and how you kind of, what you're going into, but it's always going to be a little bit different. Like I felt like with romance, and with genre fiction in general, that it's like you have this roadmap, and you
Mhm.
know where you're going to end, and some of the little like road signs you're going to pass, and otherwise, and that to me felt so freeing to know that like I can work within these parameters and it's giving me these guidelines. And I also think, before I read romance, people would always say, "Oh, you should write a book." And I never wanted to. I was like, I don't know what it would be. And I honestly think that's because my model was literary fiction. Um, and it just isn't my vibe like as a writer the way that romance like it is my vibe. And so I've just been yeah, I just started writing and it's been such a source of joy and honestly really good for my anxiety because I feel like when I go to bed, like I always have something to think about other than the spiral. Like I can always just think about a story or think about characters or and having that place. I mean, I think of there's been all other many amazing things about writing, but I think that finding that place for my brain to go to has been a really important thing for me.
Can you take us through your writing process? What does a day of writing look like for you?
Yeah, I'm a very, very chaotic writer. I have like no routines or rituals whatsoever. I am a part-time librarian, so I work at the branch 3 days a week, and I have 2 days a week at home. And so I try to write those days. I do better if either I have like an accountability buddy or I'm out of the house. So sometimes I might do like Zoom writing sessions with a critique partner. But I love a loud coffee shop. Like
Mm.
when I'm writing, I need as much happening around me as possible. Um, yeah, so if I'm home and it's quiet, it's like, no, no way. Or even if I'm at the library in a study room and it's quiet, like I can't do it. I need a lot. I think I just need a lot around me to focus in. So I tend to write this last book that I've been drafting like I wrote much faster than anything I've written before and I did it in like several 7-hour days. Like I would sit down at this tea shop, scented leaf tea shop and I would like 7 hours later I would be like, "Oh, I should probably go home. Like I've been here a long time." So, yeah, sometimes I lock in, but um it's pretty chaotic for me always.
How do you feel, or um, you mentioned you're a librarian, which I knew and I think is amazing. And thank you so much for your service, I should say.
Thank you.
So, how do you feel you being a librarian, how has that influenced your writing?
Um, I think I think that it's influenced I think as writers, it's very, very easy to like get mentally stuck in the like, how's my book doing? How am I being perceived? Right, all of those, like, am I hitting these goals or milestones or successes? And I
Yeah.
think being around so many books all the time, it's very humbling in a healthy way where I'm just like, whoa, like look at all this stuff. Like I can't like it's kind of that comfort of thinking about like how small we are in the universe. Like it's just like, oh gosh, look at all these things. Like, and there's so many books and people have so many different tastes and I'm just like I'm just one thrown in here. It's a really interesting like combination of jobs to have. And I do like my library job. I mostly like I work with youth, and so I get to do like a lot of arts and craft projects and stuff. So I feel like I get to explore other creative sides of me outside of writing. Um, but it's yeah, it's always just fun to see how many books are out there, and then every once in a while to have my book come across my library life is um I mean, the day that like my book entered our library system, when Birdie with Benefits entered our library system, it was just like so cool, and it came to my branch to go right back on hold for somebody, but they, the people that were getting delivery that day saw it and they called me over and I got to like scan the barcode, and like put it on the shelf for somebody. So that was really awesome. That was very cool.
That's so cool. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Since you mentioned crafts, I have to ask, what are some of your favorite creative endeavors outside of writing?
Yeah, I love doing this craft hour because I get to explore so many different things. I think my favorite of them have been like more textile stuff. So
Mhm.
I I've knitted like 1,000 years ago very badly and have never gotten back into it. But I do this craft at the library where we make like cardboard looms and then weave
Mm.
like so you kind of end up with like a weaving and you can put a stick in it and like hang it. Um and I love that because it can be really like textured, so you can put yarn through it, but then I might do like a strip of fabric or a pipe cleaner or a piece of paper,
Mm.
or a stick or what, and so you're kind of weaving together this thing. Um, I really love doing that. And I will just do that for fun if I'm on like a Teams meeting at work or something too. That's probably been my favorite one.
That's cool. Have you ever thought about doing like weaving on a big loom? Has that ever been something you wanted to do?
So my mom was actually a weaver, and
Oh.
I grew up with these huge looms in my house that she never used. Like, I feel like when I look back when I look back at my childhood, I'm like, oh yeah, that ADHD was like generational, because she had these big standing looms with like kind of a half done project, like in the I can't even name all the pieces. And we had a cat who would just like sleep on the like in the little hammock that was created by this half woven project, and um she went after she died in 2010. I had these few months where I was like, I'm gonna learn how to use these looms, and it just like didn't happen. But I did end up having this kind of interesting adventure where this midwife from Utah, I was doing a lot of community work around like midwifery at the time. This midwife from Utah drove down to get the looms, and while she was in town, her car broke down. And so she and her daughter stayed several days. And every day we just went to their hotel and went swimming with them and like got to know them. And then she took the looms back up to Utah. So
Huh.
yeah.
That's such a neat connection. That's
Yeah.
so cool. And what's next for you? What are you working on right now?
Yeah, I am in revisions for my third book, and it's been really it was like slow going to get it started. I feel like I started my third book 1,000 times. I was actually looking through like my folders on my computer and I was like, oh yeah, I started that one. Oh yeah, I started that one. Oh yeah. Until I finally like settled. Um, but it's yeah, it's set at a wildlife rehabilitation center. Um, and
Oh, wow.
has a lot of birds in it, has a lot of raptors. So it just I started a lot of other stories and then I was like, I think I just want to write about birds again. Like um but yeah, I really like it. I hope that I mean when I it's funny, like I love Birdie with Benefits, but when I listen to Honeybee Mine, I'm like, oh yeah, I think I'm like getting better, right? I mean, I think every book, hopefully we're gonna do that a little bit. I think that I'm becoming like able, better at handling like complexity and kind of like digging a little deeper into things. And so I'm pretty proud of how this book is going so far. Um, I just have to get it over the finish line.
And now is this going to be the next book that's released or?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Yeah,
That's it.
it'll be my next book that's released. And I'm hoping in the meantime, like I have a few things written that I indie published like under another name.
Oh,
Eliza McLean. It's like no that I'm linked to myself all over the place. And those are novellas and I'm hoping to like spruce them up and put them back out under this name
oh,
just so
okay.
everything is under one umbrella because um it's funny now to have people that like read my book and then they want to read more of my books. And I'm like, oh, yeah, well, let me make them available to you. I
Right.
would also like you to do that.
Are you going to self-publish those under Sarah?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's
Yeah.
exciting.
Thanks. I think it'll be fun to. I think for a while I was like, what's my brand and what do I need to do with these things? And I'm like, no, I'm just gonna like write whatever I want and put it wherever I want. Because, like,
Yeah, it
why
is
not?
interesting. It writing in today's day and age, it is
Mhm.
interesting. All the possibilities and all the combinations of
Right.
how writers publish their books. Um, so you have had some indie publishing experience then with the novellas. How do you like trad publish versus, or how do you like the process of traditional publishing versus indie publishing?
Yeah, I really like that there are things I don't have to worry about in traditional publishing, like, cover design and stuff like that. Like, I think for some people they love doing that or they love managing it. And I just really don't. Um, I think, with the books I indie published, they've been ebook only in large part because like I don't even begin I can't even begin to understand like how you make a paperback book and especially how you distribute it. Like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure I could learn, right? And so I
Yeah.
think it's just like where do I want to put my energy? How do I keep everything feeling like as fun as possible? And so the trad pub stuff, I really appreciate that I don't have to handle all of that. I think the timelines for trad pub can be very frustrating, like
Mm.
especially because they're not in your hands, right? And
Mhm.
so it's other people making decisions about when things are going to happen or when things are going to get published. And I'm a very like I'm a librarian. I'm an information professional. Like I really want information, and so it is hard for me to not get all of the information about something.
Right.
But I think that for me, especially because I've still, I've like got kids at home and this other job, I am pretty relieved to be able to hand a lot of stuff over to my publisher.
Now, if people want to see you, where can they see you? Where are you going to be?
Where am I going to be? So this next weekend, the 14th and 15th, I'll be at the Tucson Festival of Books, in Tucson. And April 2nd, I'll be up in Portland, which is actually where my next book is set. And I set my next book in Portland because I have a good friend there and I wanted a reason to like go visit her. And so while I'm there, I will be at Grand Gesture Books on April 2nd. And then I'll kind of just be chilling, but I've never done a tour or anything, and I really am hoping to do that this time next year when my next book comes out. I think I'll be ready to like put some energy into that planning and everything, but those are all my plans for now.
Okay, great. So people do have opportunities to see you then in Tucson and then also in
Yeah,
Portland.
in
Okay,
Portland.
that's
Yeah.
awesome. Okay. I wanted to make sure we had time to take questions because this should end in an hour, but I don't
know if we can see, if there are, I don't know if we can see them.
I don't know if we can
Right.
see.
We could just make up, you could be like, oh, this person.
Yeah, we could do that. We could just pretend. Right?
This person wants to talk more about globalization.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Oh, that's right. This person named
Penelope.
Penelope wants to have more conversations about. So maybe I don't want to leave without getting to some questions if it is possible to do so. Now there is a chat. Okay, so that they would have been left. I guess they would have been left in the chat. So okay, that makes me feel better. I was worried that we were going to have questions that
because I didn't know if they were on YouTube or something, and we couldn't do that.
So then, Sarah, in that case, as the questions are added to the YouTube channel, maybe I'm volunteering you, maybe over the next week, we'll give people like a chance to, as we post about the video and the interview, we'll give people a chance to ask questions. And then do you mind hopping on next week and answering some questions?
Yeah, I'll just go on and answer people.
Okay.
I love answering questions. I love talking about writing and books. I'll do it all the time. Yay.
Okay. And then I think that's actually, I know they said an hour, but I think we're good. I like where this is ending, and I feel like I feel like I had a ton of questions. You did such a good job succinctly answer. You were like, I'm going to talk a lot. I'm like, you did not. I could have listened to you for hours. So I want to just quickly go over, I mentioned a couple tropes at the beginning, which are single dad, girl next door, reformed bad guy. And now I'm going to add a couple more, which are small town, obviously, grumpy versus sunshine. Yes. Okay. No third act breakup, which is becoming like a popular micro trope. I love that term, micro trope. Enemies to lovers, right?
I call it I hesitate to call it enemies to lovers because I think people have such a specific idea of what they want from that, and it involves like a lot more hating of each other than I have. So it's like misunderstood to lovers or something. Like, yeah, I'm not sure how to call it that.
And do you have any others that you would like to add to our trope list for Honeybee Mine?
Oh my gosh, I don't think so. I think you covered them. I think
I'm going to add one more micro trope, which is lightly, if you're Team Jess.
Yes. if you're Team
I'm
Jess.
going to say,
and I have to say, I want to say that with context that I've never watched Gilmore Girls beyond like the first few seasons. So I don't know what happens to him. Like, if there's a reason that we're not Team Jess all the way, then like, don't hold that against me. Cause I've only ever watched where it's.
I think I speak for everybody when I say that everybody, okay, so my daughter and I have had this conversation. She is Team Jess for the first couple seasons, and then for maybe the second half of the show, she's Team Jess for Jess, but not for
I like that.
So she becomes like Team Rory, and she was Team Rory and Jess, and then as the show progressed, she's like, wait a minute, no,
right,
I'm just Team Jess.
just Team Jess without the Rory.
Right. And so in terms of like, you know, when he's younger and immature and whatnot, there are some problematic aspects to him, as there are to every teenager in different, you know, shades or whatever. But my daughter is like Team Jess for Team Jess, only Team Jess, not Team Rory. So
I like that.
She got a little she got a lot frustrated with Rory. I remember listening to her. I know I said I was going to end it, but now we're just chatting. But I listened to her watching the last season, which was when Netflix did the reboot, and I heard this strangled scream from the other room. And she's like, I hate you, Rory, like that. And she like,
I think that's why I haven't been able to watch those. I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna be rooting for her.
But it's like,
but only for Jess.
She's imperfect she's imperfect, and I think now we're just fully talking about the Gilmore Girls, but she's imperfect. She is problematic. She makes troublesome choices. But when you look at her entire character arc and her as a character, to expect any quote unquote better from her, I think would have been unfair given how she was raised in the context of her upbringing and the fact that her mom wanted to be her friend rather than her parent.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And
I feel
all
like
that-
that's what a lot of people see in like the rewatches, right? And
Yeah. I mean, it was charming when I watched it when it first came out, but then now as an adult, having raised my own children,
yeah.
I just inwardly mourn for young Rory that she didn't,
Right.
that she had a friend instead of a mom, and and all that chaos that comes with that. And in a lot of situations, Rory was the parent to Lorelai.
And
Sorry. I don't know how
I'm going to bring this back to Honeybee Mine real quick before we end, because I feel like there's maybe parallels to that in like, I mean, something I really like in Honeybee Mine with, you know, Penny works with her mom and her grandma still is those dynamics of like adults with their adult parents and what are the habits that we built in, you know? And so Penny from the start has been someone who like gets things done and makes things happen. And her mom is more like flighty, you know, her mom's the kind of person that's like, oh, let's get all these stickers printed, you know, but then the stickers like don't say the name of their farm or anything. And Penny's like, why do we do all this? And she kind of is feeling like she's just always cleaning up messes, you know? And so, and I think, you know, in the book, it's like, especially with our parents, like we build those patterns in so early and then over so much time that it's like, how can we like have a different kind of relationship with them, you know?
I do know, and that was another reason why I was like, did she base this character on me? Her name is, to bring it full circle, her name is Penny, type A personality, and that relationship with the parents. I was like, oh my gosh, what is happening? I was a little uncomfortable, but I loved her.
I was channeling you.
And I loved Xander and Penny together. So, okay, I guess that's it.
Yes. Oh, look. Okay, our host is back. We would just talk about Gilmore Girls forever. But...
Well, I wanted to pop back in because you actually do have a question.
Okay.
There's a lot of people that said nice little comments. Someone wants you to come to Los Angeles on your next tour.
Sure.
And then Sunray 93. What's your opinion on birds as dinosaurs? There's a lot of people that said
birds are dinosaurs, especially chickens. I don't know if anybody out here has chickens. I have chickens in my backyard, and the way they walk around, and if you see a chicken, we think of chickens as being like sweet, peaceful animals, but if you see chickens with a mouse, if a mouse goes in the chicken coop, it is pure dinosaur energy. And the way they walk around, they're scary. We think of chickens being like sweet, peaceful animals, but
I love that.
with a mouse.
There is someone else that would love to hear about the globalization chat.
Oh. Well, I mean, I just have so many thoughts, and I don't know, Sarah, if you have also, this series that I'm traditionally publishing, the entire like story of is about the tension between globalization and localization and what we gain and what we lose with globalization. And it takes place at a small fiber farm in North Carolina, right? And so when I saw that your book was about this small honey farm, you know, where somebody is struggling to make a business and where they have to be so smart with every decision, as you said, with the stickers. You cannot just hand out stickers. You have to make sure that your branding is on everything so people find you. And the level to which these small businesses, in order to survive, have to diversify, right? Like she has to, and it was smart of her grandmother to start this honey festival, which I love, gives so much character to your story and to the whole novel. But the level to which these small businesses have to diversify, they can't just be a honey farm. It just cannot be honey. It has to be a jack of all trades. And when you were doing your research for this book, did you find that for these honey farms for these small businesses that they weren't just that, they were also like a wedding venue and a family reunion venue. And then they also had a shop, and then the shop had an online presence and an Instagram account and yada, yada, all of these things. Like, what did you find for your local farm research?
Yeah, that's a good point. They actually were like one of the beekeepers that I interviewed in Tucson. I actually went to his workshop that he does at a resort here. So he is a person that's sort of like a jack of all trades with a lot of roles that he plays. But there is a resort here where people can kind of choose different experiences, and they can choose like a beekeeper experience. And so he teaches them about bees, and then he's got the hives that are on the property of this resort, and then the resort uses the honey in their restaurant. And so that is this, yeah, like that is a way for this little group of bees to be there. Another person that I did a workshop with, yeah, they also have like they sell a lot of stuff online, like their warehouse where we had the workshop, it was full of like antlers and skeletons. It was very interesting. But it was definitely like another business. Plus, I think, there's the business of educating people, right?
Mhm.
Like these workshops, there were like, I went to the beginning workshop, but there were workshops that were 3 to 5 days long that all cost money. So I think that's another kind of source of income, is education and hive removal. But yeah, it's definitely meshing a lot of stuff together. And I think that like at the very end of Honeybee Mine, we're gonna see Xander's property and Penny's property sort of working in vibing with each other and working in community with each other for like
Like
the future.
a symbiosis,
Yeah, exactly.
symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, which is kind of like probably what they both need to like be able to keep going.
And that is also something that I love about, again, this tension between globalization and localization is that whereas before these local farmers worked in a community, where for in my series, it's a fiber farm, but then there's a co-op that receives the fiber and then sells the fiber, et cetera, et cetera. So there were these communities that were set up prior, but they had these very defined borders between this is what we're responsible for, this is what you're responsible for, et cetera, et cetera. But with the encroachment of globalization, those lines have to blur because the number of farmers decreases, the number of co-ops decreases, and then the co-ops are really struggling on their own and they can't buy from this local fiber farm anymore or the fiber farm has to lower their prices in order to keep up with globalization. So it's either they can drop each other and go to the lowest bidder, or they can find a way, as you say, to create this beautiful new community. It's an opportunity for a new kind of symbiosis. And so when I say that, when I read your book and all of those themes were like resonated with me, and this is a thought I'm hopeful that a lot of craftspeople and a lot of artisans and a lot of artists, they have been grappling with for like 30 years with this. I mean, even before them I never will say it, but that when things are so cheap, there's a reason they're cheap.
Right. Because they're pushing off costs elsewhere into the future or into different communities or. Yeah.
And we're now getting to the point where, again, they asked for this conversation. They asked for the conversation of globalization. But we're now getting to the point where there's too many clothes. Like the sheer number of fabric items are actually damaging the earth. And to what end? Just to have opportunity and to have more selection. And so these are the types of things that I think about or have been thinking about now for like 20 plus years. What are we doing to ourselves with all of this selection? And but why? It's like, yes, we can do it, but why are we doing it? What are we gaining through doing this? Having a lot more stuff in our house. Yeah. But what are we losing in the process? So I guess again, this is a much longer conversation where I'm not an expert. I've read books, but I haven't majored in this. I'm not, I didn't go to school for this or anything, but I love that you grappled with that in your book, and not in a preachy way at all. And it's a subtext to the entire book, and you don't call it out as globalization versus localization, but
Right.
it's there. It's a
Right.
conversation starter.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you.
Sorry, are there more questions for Sarah?
No, I think that's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you so much.
We'll talk to you guys soon.
Okay,
Have a
sounds
great
great.
afternoon now.
Thanks so much,
Bye.
you too. Bye. Thanks, Penny.
Thank you so much.